Here's circuit number 2, how to get your offer accepted without experience or proof of funds. One of the main objections people have to getting started with apartment building investing is that they don't have the necessary experience. Hear this all the time. They think they need years of single family house experience before they can, quote, graduate to multifamily, which is not true at all. Now, to teach you the second secret of how to get your offer accepted without experience, I need to show you how to avoid the most common mistakes that I fell into early on. So stick around to the end. I'm going to give you 4 tips to overcoming these mistakes so you will be taken seriously even if you don't have any real estate experience at all. And as a bonus on how to handle the dreaded request for proof of funds when you don't have any. Welcome to the ultimate guide to financial freedom with real estate investing. The whole course is here on my YouTube channel, and my name is Michael Blanc. I'm a full-time entrepreneur, investor, and coach. What lights me up is helping others become financially free in 1 to 3 years by investing in real estate. Through my investment company, Nighthawk Equity, I control over $300 million of real estate, but more importantly, I have helped others acquire 14,000 units at the time of this recording. Crush that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any part of this course as we release it. So let's do this. When I had my first apartment building under contract, I had flipped over 30 houses. Now, even though the idea of buying a 12-unit building made me break out in a cold sweat at the time, I felt like I had a pretty good track record with real estate, after flipping 30 houses. But then a surprising thing happened. When I spoke with brokers and investors, they still asked me about my apartment investing experience. Of course, I didn't have any. But I told them I flipped over 30 houses, and they weren't really overly impressed with my track record. It's like I got no credit for my house flipping experience at all. I got a similar reaction from commercial real estate brokers and other professionals I spoke to. They too gave me little credit for my single family house investing experience, and they immediately honed in on the fact that I didn't have an apartment building investing track record. This stunned me, completely, utterly shocked me, because I thought for sure that my extensive investing experience in single family houses would set me up for multifamily investing, but somehow it didn't. I think it's because in people's minds, single family house investing is a completely different animal from multifamily. Now, I remember when I first started calling brokers in Texas, this was back in 2007, I had barely said a few words, and the broker would stop me and they would ask me for proof of funds, and then they would send me deals. And that usually ended a conversation. The broker never returned my phone call. Here's what I would say. Hey, my name is Michael, and I'm interested in purchasing multi-unit properties around $1 million with at least a 10% return. Can you send me some deals? I wasn't using that voice, but that's what I was saying. It sounded pretty good to me. Now, it took me a little while to figure out what was going on because I didn't know any better. I was making several mistakes that kept me from getting in the game. The answer wasn't that I needed more experience. I needed to prove my credibility. So here are a few tips for you to follow so you don't sound like a newbie. Tip number 1 is to educate yourself so you don't sound like a newbie. Now, there's specific language that commercial real estate insiders use, and apparently I wasn't using the right terms, or maybe I wasn't using them in the right way. And therefore, others immediately classified me as a newbie. Now, the best way to avoid this mistake is to educate yourself. And so use the right language. You gotta use the right language. You only, as you know, have one chance to make a first impression. So if you call a broker and sound like a newbie, you're done. It's gonna be very difficult for you to convince him or her of your credibility. Here's how you know how you sound like a newbie. When you get these questions from the broker. The seller wants to see your proof of funds before I can send you the financials. Or, hey, what multifamily experience do you have? Now, since I wasn't using the right language in my script when calling brokers, I wasn't proactively addressing the main concern every broker has when a new investor calls in. And that is the following. Am I gonna close or are you wasting my time, right? So meaning, do I have the money and the necessary experience to get this deal done? And when I cold called those brokers on the phone, that's what was going through their heads at the time. They were trying to figure out if they should take me seriously or if I was wasting their time. We're gonna fix this right now because I'm gonna give you the knockout script that will keep you from sounding inexperienced and help you get taken seriously by the brokers, and they won't ask you for proof of funds. Here's that script right now. Okay, here's that script to use. Okay, check it out. I work with a group of high net worth individuals, and we would like to expand in the Atlanta market. We already have property management company XYZ on board, and we're continuing to build our team. We're looking for deals in the $1 to $2.5 million range with at least a 6 cap, and we're looking for stable value add deals but no repositions. Is there anything you have in your pipeline that you can send me over to review? All right, now here's what you've done. I've used some bunch of words, but there's 3 things that I've done in this script. Number 1, I addressed the money part. Okay, do I have the money to close? And I was saying that I'm working with a group of high network individuals. Number two, I addressed the experience part because I said I'm already working with property management company and I'm expanding into the Atlanta market, right? Implying, but not specifically saying that I already have experience. And number three, I'm using words, terms like cap rate, stable value add, and reposition. And only commercial real estate insiders would use those kind of words. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you see how a simple script change like that could make a huge difference? Let me know in the comments below, right? I think you can see what difference that makes, and that's just one example of how just a little bit of education can pay off big for you. So make sure you educate yourself. There's a lot of free material out there, but if you're serious, you're gonna have to invest in your education. All right, so the best way to do that is to book a call with us at themichaelblank.com/call. We have a lot of advanced education, everything from do-it-yourself online courses that are very affordable to working one-on-one with a syndicator yourself. And one of those programs is going to be perfect for you to accelerate your process and get you in the game. But at this stage, you want to start thinking about investing in your education. Our tip number two to being taken seriously with brokers is to build your team so you don't look like a newbie, okay? Before we fixed it with education and sound like a newbie, now we want to position you as something where you don't look like one. Second mistake I made early on was not having a proper team behind me. When people would ask me who would manage the building, I couldn't answer because I didn't have a management company. Investors asked me what attorney would be handling transactions, and gosh, I didn't have one. Brokers were asking me who my lender was. I didn't have one of those either. So none of this added to my credibility at all. Now, to avoid this mistake, make sure you surround yourself with people who have the experience that you don't. If you have a strong team around you, then it's no longer about you and your lack of experience, but more about the collective experience and track record of your team. So imagine a conversation with a skeptical broker who asks you about your experience. Now, with a strong team around you, the conversation could be a lot different. So imagine a broker says, hey, well, what's your experience? You might say, hey, Sam, I have XYZ property managers on board and they manage 4,000 units in town and they specialize in kind of value add deals that I'm looking for. And Sam might go, oh my gosh, yeah, they're great. I know a lot of, I've worked with them in the past, and they really know what you're doing. You might say, yeah, sure, he really does. Max Cubo over there at XYZ is handling the closing logistics for me and I'm working with Brandy at Coronado Bay for the loan. Oh yeah, I've done several transactions with Mac. He's good, responsive, and Brandy is out of Dallas, right? And then you'd say, well, that's right. She's also done several loans for one of the advisors I have on my team, right? Wow. Not once are they talking about you and your apparent lack of credibility and track record. Isn't that a considerably different conversation? Don't you think that would satisfy anyone who might be concerned about your lack of experience? Remember this, the first and most important team member to recruit is your property manager. Absolutely critical. Now he or she has the experience that you don't and can give you instant credibility. Now I alluded earlier to an advisory board. This can consist of one or more experienced multifamily investors who agree to be a resource to you. Now this could be an unpaid mentor or a paid coach. For example, if you decide to work with me as a coaching student, you would instantly have your first advisory board member because you can list your mentor right there on an advisory board. If you're interested in that, book a call with us at themichaelblank.com/call and explore this as an option. You can also find potential investors at your local RIA meetings or meetups or by networking in our people like Bigger Pockets or in our online community called the Dealmaker Mastermind. All right, tip number 3 is to be professional so that you make a good first impression. Okay, so you're not sounding like a newbie, right? And you're not looking like an experienced person because you have an experienced team around you. Now, the third thing you can do to be taken seriously is to appear professional. This is super easy to do, but it'll make a big difference, right? So here's a few things you can do to make a professional first impression. Number 1 is create an LLC. It looks more professional, and if you're operating as a company and not as an individual, it's going to be a lot better. So pick a cool name, file the paperwork, get a domain name, and register your LLC. Now, you can usually do this by yourself. You just got to research online what's required, and it's not expensive. In addition to looking more professional, you can also write off your business expenses. Number 2 thing you can do is get business card. It just looks more professional if you give someone a business card. It's easy and cheap to do. You can hire someone on Fiverr to design a logo, or any of these online service guys can help you design logos and print these business cards. Just remember, a lot of these meetings are going to be virtual, so you may not actually need a business card, but it's a nice thing to have. The third thing you can do is to create a website. This is a bit harder if you're not much of a techie, but it's easier to do than ever before. So just research other apartment building investors' websites, see which ones you like, and then I suggest creating a very simple single-page websites to start because it's easier and perfectly sufficient. Now, don't over-engineer this step though, okay? Because you don't really need business cards and you don't really need a website to actually have conversations. So don't stall on this. Do not get stuck on this step. If you can do it quickly, knock out a template, that's it, okay? Check it off. So these last two steps are totally optional. Tip number 4 is to make offers that rock. That's another way you can get taken seriously by these brokers. Because my other big mistake was making offers that couldn't be taken seriously. The responses I got to my offers were mostly a request from my buyer and additional proof of funds. I wasn't even invited into the game because I couldn't get past the gatekeeper. Now that you're educated yourself, you've assembled an experienced team, you've created a professional look, it's actually now time to make offers that get the broker's attentions. So submitting a letter of intent or an LOI is to make an offer. That's a good start, but it's not enough, especially when you're just starting out. It doesn't give you enough credibility and doesn't make your offer strong enough. Even if the broker now respects you as a potential buyer, he's going to have to present your offer to the seller. And if the seller isn't convinced you can close, they're not going to accept your offer, even if the price is higher than the other buyers. So when you make an offer, you want to put your best foot forward. The following things I'm going to show you are essential for creating a strong offer package. Number 1 is a cover letter. Start your offer package with a 1-page cover letter. It introduces you, your offer, and then your team. So my sample cover letter also includes an updated bio that you can add to your board of advisors. The second component of an offer is your letter of intent or LOI, right? And that contains the terms of your offer, plain English version, your price, your down payment, your closing timeline. And the LOI is used as a basis for negotiating the deal, right? So you give that to an attorney and they create a contract out of it. Once you and the seller sign that LOI, then you forward to your attorney and they draft the purchase contract. So the result of all this is that you get instant credibility with the people you meet, right? Follow these 4 tips. You're using the right language. You're talking about your team. You're making a professional first impression, and then you're putting it all together, an offer package that gets taken seriously. Now, are you acting like a newbie right now? No, not at all. In fact, you're acting like someone who knows what they're doing. Are you going to lie about your lack of experience? No, not at all. You'll admit it if asked directly. You're still going to reference your team, your company, and your excitement about doing your first deal. I can tell you that if you do these things, chances are very low that you'll ever be asked about your experience or proof of funds. And this is just because you appear to have experience, and a broker is not going to risk offending you by asking you the question to give you the proof of funds. Because what if you already own hundreds of units? You might get pretty upset at the broker for having to justify the phone conversation. And so the brokers are smart, okay? They can sense tire kickers when you talk to them, and they know when there's a possibility to have a player on their hand. They're not gonna risk upsetting a potential client that can actually close. Now you're probably thinking, that's great, Michael. I can see how I can appear more experienced than I really am. But what if all this stuff, the brokers still ask me for proof of funds letter? All right, we're going to talk about that next. What if you do get asked for a proof of funds letter? The truth is, it is in fact very rare that you're asked for proof of funds if you're using the right language and appear confident. Like Philippe Schuligan, one of our early students who's now a full-time mentor for others, he had this to say a long time ago when I asked him about his need for proof of funds when he was just starting out. So he says in the book, Michael, to answer your question, no, I have not been asked for proof of funds. Your course really boosted my confidence and I used your scripts, so proof of funds never came up. I just had my first offer accepted for an 80-unit deal and I'm negotiating the contract right now. Laura Guy was another early student and I asked her the same question, and she did report that she did struggle with proof of funds, a question in the beginning. Here's what she said. I just got started with Michael and I have made several offers. In the beginning, the brokers were giving me a hard time and were asking for proof of funds. But after several weeks, they stopped asking. In fact, I just had my first letter of intent accepted on a 53-unit deal. I'm excited about doing my first deal. There's an easy way you can tell that you're sounding like a newbie, and that's when you get questions around your track record and proof of funds. And this is why educating yourself, developing your skills, and building your team is the key to being taken seriously by brokers and investors. So the bottom line is this: if you sound and appear confident, the chances you'll be asked for a proof of funds letter are really remote. That said, it's normal to still be nervous about being asked. So not to worry, I'm going to show you 3 ways to handle a request for proof of funds when you don't have any. Bonus: 3 ways to handle a request for proof of funds when you don't have any. But first, if you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button, please. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Now, the challenge is that if you're raising money, chances are you don't have the net worth or liquidity to satisfy a seller's request for proof of funds. Okay, I went through that. Most people go through that. You don't have like $2 million in a bank somewhere. So as a syndicator, you have a bit of a challenge there because you're going to raise it from others and then you're going to deposit the money that you raise into an escrow account for closing. But you don't have the money right now. So this can be a bit of a challenge to get a seller to ratify a contract with you because you don't have the money and the funds. Now, sometimes they do want to see proof of funds, even if you do appear confident. It's kind of like their checkbox or something. And this can be a bit of a challenge, but you need to know how to address it. So while showing the seller actual proof of funds would certainly satisfy them, there are other things you can do before you actually need to do that. So here's 3 tips you can follow when you get that request to show proof of funds. Tip number 1 is to push back. A request of proof of funds signifies a lack of trust by the broker or the seller. Because if the seller knew for sure that you can close, they wouldn't ask you for this, right? So the first thing you need to do is push back with something like this. Hey, I understand your concern about your ability to close since we're going to be raising the money, but I already have the verbal commitment from my investors for the money that we need for the deal. It'll be in the escrow account when we close, but I don't have it in a bank account right now, so I can't give you the proof of funds. But how about this? Why don't we get together, all right? Get together, get to know each other. If you don't feel 100% comfortable moving forward with us, we'll part as friends. What do you say? Now, if you're feeling gutsy, you could add, but after you do it, if your seller insists on proof of funds, we're going to have to move on. I have another 4 deals I need to look at today. Okay, so it depends on how gutsy you are. But people in general like to do business with people that they like and to trust. And the best way to build trust is with an in-person meeting with the broker and or the seller, because this gives you the chance to build that rapport, tell them what you've done and what you want to do, and then introduce them to the team members that you have around you. If you can't meet the broker or seller in person, then you'll need to do it remotely with a phone call or email or a Zoom call. If only email is possible, then create that cover letter we talked about earlier, because it provides an overview of your accomplishments and how you're going to raise money to complete the deal. Include your bio and the investor package for this. I would also create a Loom video. We use Loom a lot for things, and just create a video of yourself speaking and narrating the bio so people can see your face and look at you. Do the best that you can to make the seller comfortable with the idea of moving forward with you. If tip number 1 fails and you still want to get into the deal, here are 2 more tips that you can use to satisfy the seller's request for proof of funds. Tip number 2 is to demonstrate your investors' intent to invest. This is another thing you can do shy of providing the actual proof of funds in a bank account, and that is to show your investors' letters of intent. We covered that earlier in the 6 steps to raising private money. We talked about this letter of intent by the investors that they signed that says, hey, Michael's a great guy, I'm going to invest with him, which of course is legally non-binding. But you show all these signed pieces of documents, and this might satisfy the seller. And so again, and to the investors, it's not legally binding, doesn't cost them anything. However, it does add significant credibility to your cause. Tip number 3 is to get proof of funds from one of your investors. And you would do this only if the first 2 didn't work, right? You push back, you showed them some letter of intent, and now you're like, you know what? It's just a requirement. I need to show proof of funds. So what you can do that is get that from one of your investors. Now, proof of funds can take several different forms. It could be a bank statement or it could be a brokerage statement. What I recommend is it could be a letter from the investor's banker or broker. Many times the investors prefer the latter because it doesn't disclose exactly how much they have in the bank accounts, and it's not really necessary. What you do is you just get a letter from your banker or your financial advisor, and it just simply says, hey, so-and-so has this much under management with me, signed broker, call me with any questions. Again, proof of funds don't cost anything. They're not legally binding. So there's no obligation whatsoever on the part of the investor to actually use said funds. Indication to you how meaningless the actual proof of funds is. It's literally a checkbox precipitated by lack of trust by the broker and the seller. If you're struggling with getting a proof of funds letter from one of your investors, you can pay some money and get one. You can Google how to get online proof of funds. And for example, at the time of recording, Cogo Capital, C-O-G-O Capital, for a fee, actually gave you a proof of funds or hard money lender. Okay, and they say, hey, yeah, we'll give you up to $500,000, or you can pay them a little extra and have a phone call with them to give you more. Again, meaningless exercise, but it might satisfy the broker's requirements. All right, tip number 4 is to make the proof of funds conditional on a signed letter of intent. Now, this is absolutely a must. Okay, if you're going to go through the rigmarole of providing a proof of funds letter where you're getting one of your investors to do this, then you must insist that it's conditional on a signed letter of intent. Right? So, because otherwise the deal's not real. You might waste the investor's time and they might not even accept your terms. So, in your LOI, okay, here's what I would do. State that you will provide proof of funds within 48 hours of ratifying the LOI. Explain to the broker or the seller, if you're dealing with a seller, that you can get a proof of funds letter, but that your investor wants to make sure the deal is real before they contact their financial institution or their broker or their financial advisor. And for them, say, the best indication that the deal is real is a signed letter of intent. So I hope that by now you can see how these tips can make you appear more experienced than you really are. You've educated yourself. you're using the right language, you recruit a team that makes up for your lack of experience, and you talk about yourself in terms of that team. You are appearing professional by you have maybe a company, create a company, you create a website, and that gives you a professional first impression. And you're leveraging all this to make offers that will get accepted. Now that we've addressed the issue of experience and lack of capital, that's off the table, let's look at some of the other critical skills that you need, which is how to analyze deals and make offers. This may sound daunting, but I'm going to show you how to do it in just 10 minutes or less. So hit that subscribe button, notification bell now, so you don't miss the rest of this ultimate guide to financial freedom with real estate investing. Let me know your thoughts or questions in the comments below. I'm going to see you in the next video.